Hey, Steph, how are you?
Hi, good morning. Do you agree with the banner that flew over the courthouse that said TikTok, Matt Gaetz, or what do we think?
Oh, yeah. Justice is coming for Matt Gaetz. No two ways about it.
Well, you have been breaking it down. You said Matt Gaetz' comments over the weekend, for instance, could be taken as an admission of guilt. I mean, he also won't shut up, which I know defense attorneys love, right?
Yeah. And when he called underage sex trafficking naughty favors, I wish that were a separately chargeable crime, because that's obscene. They were sex trafficking in children, which is made clear in the Greenberg plea agreement. And, there is going to be hell to pay for these men.
Glenn, you said a majority of the plea agreement contains hard corroboration of the crimes of not only Joel Greenberg, but the crimes of others, adding the prosecution has laid out some really troubling crimes. I think one of the most ominous features of this plea agreement, he pled guilty to a charge for conspiracy to commit offenses against the United States. You said you have co-conspirators, because that's a requirement under the law of conspiracy, that you agreed with one or more persons to commit these crimes against the United States. You said, so we already know by virtue of this plea, there are co-conspirators who are likely to be indicted and held accountable. We just don't know quite who they are. And you said, who can he implicate beyond Matt Gaetz? Will Stone, DeSantis will know soon enough. What is your thinking on that?
Yeah, so I've spent a lot of quality time with the 86-page plea agreement. And as you just mentioned, 60 pages of it are receipts, hard corroboration of what Greenberg did and what others did. But those others have not yet been named yet. But, it hasn't gotten a lot of attention that the sixth charge, the last charge that he pled guilty to, is a conspiracy to commit offenses against the United States. Pretty dramatic. Now, it's a very broad statute, and it can include all sorts of criminal conduct. But the thing is, the prosecutors know who all of these members of that particular conspiracy are. But they had to wait until Joel Greenberg pleaded guilty in order to indict those people. Why is that? Because before Joel Greenberg pleaded guilty yesterday, everything Joel Greenberg said to the prosecutors about the crimes of others was all hearsay. It couldn't be used until Joel Greenberg pleaded guilty, which extinguishes his Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination. Now, I'm telling you, he was a huge domino to fall, even though he's not a huge name, because now the prosecutors have available all of his information, all 60 pages, and I'm sure there's 600 pages more that we don't know about, implicating other bigger fish. So those dominoes are all going to begin to knock one another over.
Why is Joel Greenberg's lawyer a grandstanding D, in your opinion? Why is he being too cute by half? Like, what? It's just,
I assume it's because he's getting his 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But you have to take this stuff with a level of seriousness when you're talking again about child sex trafficking. And if you read these 60 pages, Joel Greenberg is one despicable character. As a prosecutor, I would never put him on the stand unless I could corroborate every single word he told me about the crimes of others. If he testifies that his name is Joel Micah Greenberg, I want to see his driver's license with Micah being his middle name.
Yeah. But as you were saying, I mean, normally, you don't get it. When you were a prosecutor, you don't give a plea deal like this unless he has given up someone above him and it's corroborated, correct?
This is a shooter on the grassy knoll plea agreement. So, Steph, I've entered into more plea agreements with defendants who wanted to be cooperating witnesses than perhaps anybody, given the unique nature of our practice in the criminal courts of Washington, D.C., where I spent decades. I never drafted an 86-page plea and cooperation agreement, and I certainly never offered somebody, you know what? I know we've got you indicted for 33 felony counts. If you'll just plead to 6, we'll get rid of 27. I'm telling you, he had to not only give up blockbuster information about bigger fish, but the prosecutors had to be satisfied that it was truthful and that it was provable. It was corroborated. So I'm telling you, hold on tight, because the justice we've all been waiting for it is about to start coming. It
Yep.
really is.
That's a little thrill up my leg I wait for with Glenn Kirschner. Now, let's talk about Rudy, now that I'm all excited. You said it will take time for the searches of Rudy electronic devices to be completed and the materials reviewed by a special master filter team to make sure prosecutors protect legitimately privileged attorney-client materials. Prosecutors take that responsibility deadly seriously. Is it as hilarious to you as it was to me that Rudy seeks to, okay, he opened a broad attack on the searches that they conducted of his home, his office, and his iCloud, asking the judge to block any review of the seized records while his lawyers determine whether there was a legitimate basis for the warrants. His lawyers are seeking copies of the confidential government documents that detail the basis for the search warrants, a legal long shot that they hope could open the door for them to argue the evidence should be suppressed. They said it would have been more appropriate and less invasive to seek information through a subpoena, which, unlike a warrant, would have given him the opportunity to review the documents and respond. Justice Department policy recommends prosecutors use subpoenas when seeking information from lawyers unless there's a concern about destruction of evidence, which tells me they were concerned Rudy Giuliani was going to destroy the evidence, which is why they did it, right? I mean, so Rudy's like, oh, no, can I just see all the stuff first? And then, I mean, that's just, you don't do that, right? With
no, Rudy,
defendants? Go ahead.
Rudy made up all of these new legal standards and legal procedures and requirements before search warrants will issue. I urge people not to listen to any of this nonsense Rudy Giuliani is spouting out there. You know, he's a man circling the drain and he's looking for something to grab onto. But, you know, we could do a whole criminal law 101 class taking down every assertion Rudy made about search warrants and how they're obtained, how they're executed. But he's making up all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And I think what makes me happiest right now is that he's looking for a lifeline from Donald Trump, and not just a financial lifeline, because we know Donald Trump stiffed him on his legal fees, but he's also looking for Trump to swoop in and say, all of that stuff that Rudy was doing in Ukraine, he was doing it for me, and Trump won't go there.
Yes.
Why? Because that would be Trump announcing that, by the way, I'm guilty as a co-conspirator of everything Rudy did in Ukraine. And it's crazy because he did it for Donald Trump, and now Trump won't even vouch for it. Rudy is done.
I mean, does he not get that Trump has thrown everyone under the bus and, of course, was going to... I mean, the headline is Rudy Giuliani desperately begging Trump to help as the feds close in and is being ignored. I mean, this strikes me like the Michael Cohen headlines right before he flipped. I mean, it's... Giuliani and his allies have been sending frantic pleas for help after the FBI raid. Trump, however, has refused to come to Giuliani's rescue. I mean, which has led to simmering frustrations. I mean, do you think Giuliani's going to flip? It doesn't sound to me like he's going to have any choice.
Yeah, he's going to go the same way Michael Cohen ended up going. You know, Michael put up a good fight for a while, and then he started talking about Trump's crimes and shenanigans. Rudy's going to go the same way because, listen, at the end of the day, Rudy is all about Rudy just as much as Trump is all about Trump. So Rudy's going to do what he needs to do to stay out of prison as best he can.
So let's turn to, you had tweeted Congressman Andrew Clyde's lies about the Capitol attack likely make him a star defense witness in the upcoming trial of the insurrectionists. Here's why. Yeah. This idiot that said, oh, this was just like regular tourist visits. And then there's a picture of him helping barricade the door, screaming as the Capitol Police are pointing their guns. I mean, talk to us about because there has got to be accountability, as you and I keep talking about. There has got to be accountability all the way to the top. But talk to us about that guy in particular.
Yeah, so this Georgia gun dealer, Andy Clyde, who's been in office all of about 4.5 months, obviously lied to us all in that congressional hearing when he said there was no insurrection. And the folks in the Capitol that day acted exactly as tourists act every other day. Here's one of the problems. There is speech and debate clause protection for members of Congress who lie to us. And there's no getting around that. But what he because he can't think 3 steps ahead, what he has done is made himself a potential defense witness for every single insurrectionist who goes to trial, because they can force him, subpoena him, compel him to take the stand and repeat what he said about no insurrection, and just like any other day in the Capitol. And we all, now, he will be impeached mightily. His credibility will be destroyed. However, there will be 12 jurors sitting in the box, Steph. One of them may listen to a sitting member of Congress and may say, you know what, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but he's a congressman. And if he tells me there's no insurrection, I may have reasonable doubt and I may have to hold out for not guilty. The damage that he did writ large and potentially in each of the insurrection cases when they go to trial is pretty consequential. And I hope somehow, some way justice comes for that, knucklehead, because he has no business being a member of Congress.
Well, I was just going to say, the news today, of course, is Kevin McCarthy is making sounds like he's, not going to is going to block the January 6th commission. I mean, but again, he's involved. He was on the phone with Trump. He's a witness, right? Josh Hawley, Marjorie Taylor Greene gave tours with insurrectionists. I mean, Lauren Boebert tweeted Nancy Pelosi's whereabouts. I mean, how do we? There's a news story today. One of the insurrectionists had a firearm. That's been a talking point that, no one was armed. This was just tourists. They were armed with bear spray, chemical irritants, fire extinguishers, knives, clubs, poles, hockey sticks, baseball bats, and one of them had a gun. I mean, how is justice going to come? Is it going to have to be the DOJ and Merrick Garland is what I'm saying? Because I think people are feeling like we're not even going to have a January 6th commission. What do you think?
Yeah, so I saw the McCarthy quote, and we have when we were doing drug operations, gang investigations in D.C., we had a term, and I don't think it's unique to us. It's called an open air drug market. When there's a particular part of the city where folks are kind of openly and notoriously selling drugs, it's an open air drug market. I saw McCarthy's statement that there shouldn't be a bipartisan investigation into the insurrection as an open air cover up, because what he is doing. He is at a minimum a witness. He is probably a subject, and he may very well be a target for his conduct and his conversations with Trump. And now somebody who is intimately involved, at least in the investigation of what happened on January 6th, and perhaps complicit in it, is yelling and screaming that it shouldn't be investigated. Well, guess what? The people being investigated don't get to tell law enforcement that they should stop investigating something that may expose them. So, McCarthy, I think, is only opening his mouth to change feet these days, right? And he can't keep his story straight. But I think he may end up in real hot water as well.
Kurt Bardella, a former, GOP, said Act 2, he said the January 6th lies are the beginning of a three-part plan that's worse than Al-Qaeda. Act 2 is the 2022 midterms. If Republicans get control of one of two chambers of Congress, I guarantee you in 24, they won't like the results of election. They will not certify them. They will create a constitutional crisis, the likes of which we've never seen, putting democracy on edge and under threat in a way that it never was during of Al-Qaeda during everything we experienced in the 2000s. Glenn, this is why and I know you and I keep screaming about it. There has got to be accountability for January 6th, for what's happening in Arizona, for what happened in Georgia, because it is an ongoing coup that is going to promote more violence. I mean, threats to members of Congress are through the roof. There's got to be accountability for this, right? We are still in this insurrection, aren't we?
Yeah, and I agree with Kurt, but there is one thing that will change the storyline on the play from hell that we are all watching and frankly actors in. And it's when Merrick Garland's Department of Justice starts indicting big fish, members of Trump's cabinet, members of Trump's family, and Donald Trump himself. That will completely rewrite the script. And at that point, the entire narrative will change. That has to be done, or else I agree with Kurt, we're probably doomed. But let's not forget where we've been in just the last few weeks. We have banged out search warrants for Rudy Giuliani's home and office. We had a Greenberg plea agreement that is implicating tons of bigger fish, and it's coming. We've got the Department of Justice announcing yesterday a COVID fraud task force. Buckle up, Jared, because they're coming for you. We've got a civil rights criminal prosecution launched by the Department of Justice of those 4 officers who killed George Floyd. We've got more insurrectionists being locked up every dang day. Look at all of that, ball all that up together, and let it give you comfort that Merrick Garland, Lisa Monaco, and the honorable leadership at the Department of Justice is doing our work, doing the people's work, and they're not going to stop.
Yeah.
They're not. So
Okay.
the narrative of the play is about to change.
Okay. Glenn, I might get shot down live here. Is there any chance you can just hang on for one more couple minutes here?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Good. All right, because Sean looks like he's going to kill me, but there's so much, and it's so good. And I have a couple more really important things to ask you. If you have not heard of the Sexy Liberal Podcasting Network, your podcasting superstation, you suck. I mean,
yes.
We have the smartest, funniest liberals in the country. Stephanie Miller's Happy Hour. We have John Fugelsang. We have Hal Sparks, Frangela, Final Word, and Idiot of the Week. We have Bob Seska. Oh my God. We have Jody Hamilton from The Bunker. We have Start Me Up with Kimberly Johnson. We have Unprecedented. We have the smartest, funniest podcast, period. Get it now. SexyLiberal.com.